Ain't going back, not gonna buy into all that. Hey, hey, ain't gonna hide, gonna let all the fears slide. Got Mother Nature is on my side. Got all of the loving growing inside.
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here once again with Howdie Mickoski. It's been a little while since we've done our chats before, and today we've decided to tackle a topic which we both have not seen covered very much, if at all, in any of the YouTube chats related to freedom, and that is not doing, as in the opposites of doing. So we figured we'd look at a few definitions. I mean, not doing at its core is the opposite of anything you've done in life. To act in ways that are different from you, to gain energy and power, I would say, from seeing how you can be unique to how you used to be. Definition from Tolteca is simply, and I'm reading here, is any unfamiliar act that engages our total being by forcing it to become conscious of its luminous segment, the opposite of doing. Hey, Howdie.
Yeah, Lorenzo, good to see you again.
So what do you think about not doing? Or not think about it?
Well, we of course we both have, of course, our experiences, and it's like you say, I think it's a topic that's very rarely discussed. I think it's rarely discussed because very few people have done it. Some people have maybe read something about it, but you can't really understand it until you've attempted to put it into practice. And I kind of joke that it's the George Costanza of the spiritual world, because it is doing the opposite. And I like the definition of the luminous being as part of it, but for me it was I was using not doing as a test for the mind and the test for how I was identifying myself as a personality.
Really? So you mean you would not do the mind by the opposite of thinking? Is that what you mean? But so maybe you can expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, that was the testing point for it, because for me, the two practices of recapitulation and not doing kind of went together. You couldn't do one without the other. Of course, we'll go into what we think not doing is as we go on. But for me, it was the testing of what my mind thought I was, or what my mind believed myself to
Mm.
be, which I realized was then solidified in the actions that I took. You can't be seen as intelligent or stupid if you don't act or speak or do things in a certain way that
Ah,
others will in a sense mirror that back. So as soon as I was doing alternate actions, that would be altering how others in the world saw me. So it had to start altering how I saw myself, if that makes sense.
it does. It does. It's like you change yourself from the inside out. We've chatted about that. So by altering how you act in relation to how you think you should act, I guess in relation, if you're going to take the third point, how you think people should see you act, that's a very good way to describe not doing. I mean, you mentioned recapitulation. I was going to bring it up later, but since it hit the road so early in our chat, supposedly from the Toltec's perspective, that's the ultimate of not doings, the not doing of your life. So maybe, we can go into that a little bit. I mean, I've done a recapitulation. You've mentioned you've done a recapitulation. Even an hour and a half ago before we came on here, I was doing a short one, 20, 25 minutes, meditating to see what I may have changed since the last time you and I chatted, as far as, picking up some of my patterns and not wanting to
Yeah.
repeat them in our third chat, kind of going over. I recapitulated our first two talks.
Cool.
Energetically reviewed them, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it'll be curious to see how we both we can start maybe how we both came to not doing, or wanting to start it. And yeah, so for me, it was when I first read these books about 25 years ago now, right? And when I was reading about, and I think not doing first shows up in Journey to Ixtlan. Am I correct?
It
That's
does.
where
It
that's where
does.
some of the ideas of not doing first appear. Yeah,
Yes.
in his third book. Um, and it wasn't, I think, until the fourth book that he began mentioning the importance of when you do the recapitulation and you start seeing the patterns of your life, if you don't apply the not doing to start doing the opposites of the patterns, the recapitulation doesn't show much. It shows you what it shows you your patterns in your mind, But then you have to begin the process of breaking the patterns in order for the recapitulation to have actually revealed something useful, and so that it can go deeper. So and I think it's the same way with the not doing. If you're not doing, but not looking into your past, you're kind of only doing half of a practice. So for me, when I first came to it, it was, I mean, I was curious about recapitulation originally. I was curious about what not doing and doing the opposite would be. But once I got the sense that they go together, that they combine each other, I realized, okay, if I'm going to do this properly, I have to do both.
Yeah, I mean, I found the recapitulation and the not doing on a simple level is worth doing because they give you energy, they give you power, they break your limitations of imagination, and you get to study the beliefs in yourself. You know, as you mentioned about your personality from a younger age, where you pick up who you are and how you are, and then by doing its opposite, and it's almost impossible to talk about the experience you get, but your body gets a feeling of powerful enhancement. It's a good way as any to say. I mean, I can only give as an example. I'm very shy. Nobody believes me. I don't really like doing videos. I've done several hundred at this point, and I have to jump over my shyness each and every time. So even doing this is a not doing for me. As a second point, when I do my videos, they're always early in my morning. Howdie is pretty much the only person I talk to later in my day because I enjoy chatting with him so much. So even doing a video right now, it's 4 o'clock in my afternoon is a not doing for me. And this is, even if I was going to bring us together into this is a not doing of the third part. And I'll put links to our first two chats for people that want to catch up, because we did mention recapitulation in the first two talks that we did as well. This is the not doing of our third chat, kind of tying in the topic of being free, let's say, because this is certainly, I would say, as the Toltecs say, a non-negotiable part of getting free, the recapitulation.
It seems like it, at least. And again, it's so different for us, and this is why I I like being able to share these topics with you. It's why it came up when we were thinking of, well, what we're going to talk about next. And when the idea of not doing is, again, because this idea that you can't know any of these practices if you haven't done it. And again, for all the people out there just who are, watching this channel, I've talked to a lot of people about recapitulation. I've talked to a lot of people who wanted to do it, who started, who made their list. Lorenzo's the only one I know that's done it personally. So it's like, as far as I know, there's me and him. That I know a lot that's tried, but it is a real dedication and a real commitment you have to make with yourself in order to go through the whole process of it. And it's the same with not doing, because for not doing, I started to realize, and you kind of learn it as you go. It's like there's segments to not doing. There was the initial segment of just doing simple things the opposite. Which hand do you hold your toothbrush in? Which way do you pour water in a glass? It started simple, but then they started to expand. It was starting to do sort of behaving in opposite patterns with other people. It might be doing crazy things as you walk down the street. Then it might be this idea of acting for the sake of acting, which is another thing we can talk about. And kind of just the process began to get bigger and bigger as you went through, and became more and more difficult, you might say, for my mind, at least I can say for my mind to be accepting that these not doings were happening. It was fighting. The bigger they got, the more the mind fought me for doing it. And so it's also so not doing. I saw required a commitment as well, because it would be very easy to just listen to the mind and quit.
Maybe one of the biggest parts of not doing is acting without the mind, without thinking. You watch children, even the other day, I was watching children play, and then I brought myself back. Three girls, little girls, 3 and 4, were on their scooters and are on their little bikes, running around screaming at each other in Japanese and just having a good old time on a day where the weather wasn't so nice, and they didn't care, and they were laughing and screaming their heads off and having so much power and energy. I'm going, you're remembering, or I was recalling what it's like when you're, a little one, and you're pretty much not doing your day. And that changes your time, it changes your feelings, it changes your humor, changes your health. It really gives you the full experience of, because maybe a lot of people are asking, why do this since it's so hard, or since it's very difficult? But the simplest reason
Mhm.
I could give them is power, health, happiness, and a great imagination.
Yeah, it was again, because for me it was the realization that as I as the patterns began to get broken, I realized how much energy was placed into the patterns. So it's almost like it's not like when you're doing it's not like energy just shows up to you, at least in my view. It doesn't like come from outside, it comes from inside. It's stuff that you're placing into things you don't even know it's going towards. And all of a sudden, once you not do by doing the opposite, then you're no longer bound to continue the old pattern necessarily. And and that energy gets redistributed for other things. The other one that comes from not doing, at least in my view, was this idea of things you never noticed about yourself or your life or the world or whatever else becomes free to show themselves to you because when we're in these locked in patterns, we're also locked into how we see everything else around us. So for me it was also the sense of, as I would not do, something bizarre would come about. And we can go through, share some stories and whatnot. But yeah, for anyone who's interested in this, it's the ability just to see how robotic we make ourselves, how much we're on a record groove and don't even know it. I mean, like, just the simple fact of, have you ever put the toothbrush in your other hand in the morning when you brush your teeth? The average person would probably say no.
Mm.
I've used, and in fact, you probably put the same amount of toothpaste, you brush in the exact same pattern, the exact same number of strokes. I mean, literally, it's like the most boring practice you can do. You just put the toothbrush in your other hand, it's like you're on a totally new universe.
It's interesting, you should say that. Like about 6 9 months ago, I hurt my right arm, and I'm right-handed more or less, and so I couldn't really use it. I really hurt my shoulder. I don't know how it happened, so I had to, as you mentioned, start using my left hand. And so for 6 months, I mean, I'm better now. I practiced. I moved my energy, but I was sitting in the as an example of what you said in the morning in my kitchen table. And I'm a horrible shot with my right hand. I tried playing baseball. I was picked last. I couldn't hit a barn with with a barn sending 6 foot away. I throw it this way and that way. And I wasn't even paying attention that I had a piece of Kleenex in my hand, and I just threw left hand, and I just threw it at the garbage, like a little bag of garbage in or sink, and went right in from the opposite end of the kitchen. And I wasn't thinking, and I wasn't doing it. And it was like a huge, so as Howdie said, you get to pick up some skills and ideas, and it was beyond thought of what you're capable of. So now I know, breaking the pattern of telling myself I'm a lousy shot and I couldn't hit, the side of a barn with a snowball. I'm from Toronto, where there's lots of snowballs in the winter. That actually perhaps I have the ability to be accurate as far as, choosing a target and taking it. And, we can also continue on that path even beyond the physical, choosing a target and going for it.
Right. No, it's yeah, it's one of those things that as you go about the practice, and like I'm having to it's so long ago, right, since we started this. When I think back to, because I did the simple stuff at the beginning, it was like that. It was holding the toothbrush, putting your shoes on in the different order, and that was just like a warm up. And it's when it moved to not doing in public. So it's one thing when you're just alone in your bathroom and okay, change it. But once I started not doing in public, that was the next step for me. So I remember a couple of things, a couple of my not doings, and I'll bring them up and I'll share. This is what so the next one I did. One was when I would walk down the street, just, and it had to be absolutely random. Like I couldn't even, I couldn't get a conscious thought first and then do it. It just like had to happen spontaneously. But I might jump up or jump sideways or stop and like shake my hands or anything that would be completely different to my normal walking motion. And it was important that it was better if there were people on the street, because then my sense of self-importance or safety of how people think about me are going to get a bit of a jolt too. Because everybody, if I walk down the street and I'll just go and then start walking, people they get this look, like what's going on. So I had to also feel the reaction of the other
Mm.
people as I did the not doing. So that was, yeah, that was one of them that I remember that so it was, one was on the street, and then the other was as I was in conversation, particularly with people that I knew, I would at some point throw in a sentence that made no sense and protect and even maybe wasn't even in anything that sounded English. It just, I mean, yes, yeah, and then just go back to conversation just to see what would happen from doing something so strange. And so that was the next level of not doing for me, was adding this strangeness to it. And because that was also fighting uh my need to have other people like me, or other people to
Mm.
see me in the way I want them to see me. And all of a sudden now I'm acting in ways that seem strange and crazy. So I'm also testing this belief of how I want others to view me.
I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned not doing in public, which, right away, I have a bizarre sense of humor. It sounds like an R-rated movie, not doing in public. And then you said it's better when other people are watching. So it kind of enhanced my own imagination down that path.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm bringing that up, it's not to be rude. It's when I was living in Nelson on the land, they had a fashion show for a hemp company at the time. And I was conscripted to be in the fashion show because it was a non-professional one. And I was
Right.
with a hemp apron, and a lady with a hemp apron. Some guy says, "We have a great idea. How about you go on stage in just the apron, nothing else?" Like, so from behind, you're naked, basically. Right. So it's just a hemp apron. And, again, I'm
Yeah.
super shy. And 20 years ago, I was even more shy because this is kind of when this happened. And I heard that voice, the one that you said, it's like, everyone will see you funny. They'll look at your ass. You're not in good shape. All those. And I said, okay, why not? And it was pretty much one of the best experiences of my life because, you go up stage, you're showing off, and then you turn around and walk away. And of course, people see your behinds
Right.
when you're walking. And as you said, it gave me all those jolts you mentioned. And to this day, it's one of my most fond memories. And it brings up power and energy just by recollecting or recalling or recapitulating that moment.
Right. And it also links into another Castaneda comment in one of his books when he said, if you're willing to play the fool, then you're able to fool anyone. So much of, and that's another part of not doing, is the way is interacting with people in such a way that we are uh, in control of the interaction without seeming like we're in control, that and part of that is being able to, if necessary, change our personality for parts of the time because the conversation of the moment dictates it. So it allows us this. If we go back to the initial, sorry, the initial definition you gave, which was about energy, and also discussing the assemblage point. So not doing, the ability to not do on a different level. Now, if we go a little deeper, it's not just shaking apart our belief in ourself, it's actually shaking apart the way the assemblage point is stuck to that place. We have the patterns and we have the assemblage point, but as the not doing happens, it's the assemblage point starts to move, and so other worlds can start to be established. One thing that I think Castaneda was so clear on and was so correct on was this idea that people are either dreamers or stalkers as their sort of core. A dreamer being someone who mostly works directly in the alternate realities in these other worlds, and so they have easy access to cross the barrier into other worlds. But they have sometimes challenges here in this reality, which is dealing with it, and as opposed to the stalker, who is more like a hunter like an animal that hunts. We need to become very proficient in this world, and that's where the recapitulation and not doing is. We don't cross very well into the other realms, but if we not do and do this well, we then do loosen the assemblage point, and we are able to get into the dreaming practice. So both of those also merge together. It's this sense of knowing which side do I kind of fall on, because if somebody dreams well enough, who is a dreamer, they will start learning that they will start seeing themselves better, and they'll start making changes automatically to their behavior. They won't have to not do forcibly. It'll happen smoothly. So it's also this takes you on a much bigger path that it will swing you to the two sides as you go along. So there's so much to the practice. I guess, it's good just to present this to people of how pervasive this work can be. It just seems like at the beginning you're not doing very much.
I mean, it ties into, in my opinion, everything. It ties into freedom, ties into health, ties into a better life. It ties into leaving the matrix. I mean, I've seen 1,000 million videos on how to leave the matrix, 1,000 million videos on how to have a better life, how to be free. But very few people are willing to be that fool. I've noticed, as they said, I like, I think at another point in one of the books, they said, if you don't mind being the fool, you become invulnerable, right? Because you'll do anything at any time for any reason without caring how people think. And that's a superpower in this world, especially. And,
Right.
And so by doing the recapitulation, we could bring it back as the ultimate not doing, perhaps there's other ones, but in this world, it's the easiest one to understand. You gain that visceral ability to be free, to change yourself, to change your life, to find out, why your life sucks and whatever reasons you think it sucks, to grab the definitions. You mentioned that, as they said, Castaneda said, or Don Juan, this world is just a description, right? A friend was talking to me about that other day. So if you change the description, you can change just about everything.
Right. I'll give a not doing example for you and for everyone. It's one of the ones I did much later in the work, and like it was 2004, I guess was the year. Anyway, I was dating this girl, and we had this opportunity to go to a 1950s event, 50s or 60s event. It was something like that, 60s or 70s. So we wanted to dress up. So, because some people it was a group of us, and we're all going to dress up. And I decided I'm going to dress up like Tony Clifton, Andy Kaufman's alter ego. So I got the proper suit, I got the hair, I got the sideburns, but the most important part was to become Tony Clifton. And for anyone who doesn't know, Andy's idea with Tony Clifton was basically to be a complete asshole constantly, but in such a way that would be actually revealing things. Now I'm going to explain the how this went because it was amazing. So I got in costume, and of course I was a impersonator, so it's not that big of a challenge for me to get it going. But when we got there and we started, it was very, very hard to be Tony Clifton because basically you have to be an asshole for like 2 or 3 hours. So it was very, and of course, I don't know anybody who's here, it's like, so I'm starting with this inner voice. You're not supposed to speak like this. Good boys don't act like this, yeah. But as it started, what became really weird was a voice started to come out of things that I would have wanted to say that actually had value and were true. And so I'll give you an example. One was I was walking by this. So I by this point, I'm just like saying anything. It's like, if I'm going by the buffet table, it's like, who put these chicken wings here? These wings are they're not cooked. Who didn't, and of course people started, yeah, they aren't cooked. Why am I eating these things? So other people began talking about. So I'm walking by this area of it was the spectator stands, and it was right next to a railing. The seats were terrible. And I remember also, okay, these people, these are the crappiest seats I've ever seen. These people should be moved instantaneously. So security needs to come right now and move these. And the people all stood up and said, yeah, these are crappy seats. I want to be moved. I don't want to be sitting here for the show. And they literally rose up as one and started screaming at people to move them. And that's when I started realizing, holy smokes, when you actually not do in such a case, you're actually allowing parts of yourself or parts of what you might say truer perception that you even hide from yourself of what's around you to come out. Now, it was, of course, like I say, very challenging. And as the night went on, it's like it started, though, taking me over. There's a point where it stops becoming not doing and it starts to become like a new pattern. And it's like I had to almost start going away by myself to remember I'm not Tony Clifton. So a whole lot of that practice all showed up for me in this little, and also one more of the Tony Clifton story thing. So the night's over, we're walking out. I had a little bit left, and then we're up on a railing. This is at the Calgary Saddle Dome, and there's like a high part of the railing, and you're looking down like a story onto the parking lot. And there's like 3 or 4 girls. They're about 14 years old, 15 years old, and they're looking over the railing, kind of like they're right on it, almost ready like to they if they jump down, they're going to hurt themselves, right? And I looked at them saying, the way the world's going to be and the jobs are going to be in the next 10 years, you girls might as well jump and get it over with. They laughed so profusely because, of course, on some level, they recognize, yeah, the next 10 years aren't going to look good for me, but it was still just in a joking way. And so it was an incredible not doing for me because when it was over and I took the costume off and I sat down and it was kind of like, so that's what it's like to be the exact opposite of yourself. And it's amazing when you free yourself to say whatever wants to come out with no filter. Actually, the world around you doesn't hate you for it. They actually can embrace it because you're saying what they wish they could say, but they've blocked themselves in. And I guess somehow down the road, like I'm talking about very difficult things now on my channel and in my books. I don't think if I had done a number of the not doings and got used to being okay that people will think I'm a bit crazy, I wouldn't have the courage to be doing what I do now. Sorry,
Yeah.
long story,
No,
but I
no,
thought
it's a
I should
good,
share that with
it's a
everybody.
great story. And if people, get upset and they don't talk to you or they get offended, then that's part of the not doing, perhaps of not having them around or in your life anymore, if you're being honest. I mean, what
Yeah,
better way to, because this whole world, you and I both know, is full of people. You go out and you chat and everyone's got a mask on. Everyone's not being honest. Everyone's like 6 points away at the very least from perhaps
right.
what their heart wants to share and what they really want to be doing with their time in life. And,
Yeah,
all of it, from
right.
the time they wake up to the time they go to bed.
Yeah.
And this gives them something to feel, like what's that fresh wind blowing by that perhaps I can do as well by watching and not doing, and to see how that might be emulated. At least that's what's happened for my life, where it allows me to pick up different pieces of myself and to see what I can do with them or play with them.
Yeah, and that's a really good example. It's certainly that's another, I think, piece of the not doing, right, from that story, which is you begin to get more comfortable acting in the way you feel you most want to, not the way you feel you're supposed to, or not the way that the parent's voice in your head or your
Mm.
teacher's voice in your head is still there of how you're supposed to behave, how you're supposed to be nice with everybody. You can just start saying, this is me, this is what I want to do. And it's okay to do it. And then when you do it and you find out the world doesn't end, the sun comes up the next day, it's like, oh, it's okay to be how I want to be. So it also, yeah, so there is you talk about freedom. That's an ultimate freedom within the dream, is to be the way you want to be.
I mean, I feel that's why people like the situation comedies or the TV or the shows or the movies. They're always watching people act perhaps in ways they would like to act that seem freer, even though they're actors on a screen and maybe they're not. And, I always wondered why
Right.
they seem to be having so much fun. Then when you do something out of the ordinary, you mentioned, Costanza from that show, George Costanza, and it does give you, tying it back down to the recapitulation, if you untie all of your habits, all of your beliefs, all of your ideas of what you should and shouldn't be doing, which is a huge task, right? I'm still doing it. Like I still fall into old belief patterns, today and yesterday and probably tomorrow. I've got to be very careful all the time, conscious of what I'm doing. But there's nothing that gives me more of an ability, like they say when you get older, Howdy, like some people start to see their road is narrowing, or they've got more life behind them than in front of them, so they get sadder or angry, or they start locking lower to the ground. So the reason I'm mentioning this is it's also an elixir of life they're not doing, because it's allowed me to see my vistas open up. Not like, oh, I used to play baseball, now I'm getting weaker, so
Mm-hmm.
my baseball's, and I'm not going to earn as much, I'm not going to chase as many ladies, and et cetera, et cetera. Right? To wow, I can imagine this and climb a mountain, or I can imagine that and do some art. I mean, I'm learning Japanese, in my late 50s, so and that's a huge not doing. I'll tell you that for nothing, everyone listening. And it's not an
Mm-hmm.
easy, 4 alphabets, an easy language to
Right.
learn whatsoever. But it does give me, like, I wake up with the wonder of a child every day. Like, I wonder what's happening today. I wonder what I'm going to do. I wonder where I'm going to go. I wonder which, I'm going on a huge adventure very soon, to cross the United States. More on our channel coming up, over the next couple of weeks, to allow for myself to
Right.
continue on, instead of saying, I'm getting older, it's time to settle down and do less. Whereas, no, 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 no. It's time to increase your power and do more.
Yeah, that same thing. I think Castaneda said it. The more you not do. Therefore, the more the world is unknown to you, that means you don't know where the rabbit's going to pop out of, right? He said it's something like that, which was also something that I found in my not doing as well. The more I did the not doing deeply, more things just started happening randomly when I walked down the street or when I went in somewhere. There would be, I don't want to say there'd be more coincidences happening, but they would be much more significant and certainly much more recognizable as like, okay, this is happening. Pay attention to this, you know? So it also, like you say, it opened up. Maybe so much the world wasn't necessarily different, but because my perception was becoming different, you were began noticing things differently than you did before. All of a sudden, like you say, there's so many more opportunities that I guess were always there, but because of our tunnel vision, we couldn't see them. And yeah, it's an interesting thing when you talk about it that as you get older, if somebody in their 50s or 60s starts not doing, a whole bunch of new doors might open up that they never even, like you say, you think your life's going this way when actually it can start even expanding even more, where you take the experiences of your life and now apply them to an even wider road. So it's a really, there's so many parts to what not doing can do for somebody. And it's one of those things like recapitulation. I can't recommend it enough for people to give it a test and try it out and see what happens.
I mean, I feel it's a trick of the archons. Maybe we'll bring them into this conversation a little bit. That when you get older and wiser, and you become better at noticing what actions have value, right? You're not again chasing maybe money so much. You're not chasing tail so much. You're not chasing golden baubles so much. You're finding that there are other things that are more important in life. Most people get weaker and less energetic, and they an inability to follow through on their wisdom in the active sense, not just thinking about it, but to actually get out in the world and do it. And by not doing, you reclaim a lot of your own energy, juice, power, so that you do have the ability to act on your wisdom, as you said. And so the older people should be the wiser people, because they've been around longer, they have more experience, and if they can act on their wisdom in a powerful way, not like an old person, I told you when I was younger. I mean, no one listens to that. But if you're, like you said, if you're putting on the clown suit, as you did, and you're going to the Calgary Stampede and you're showing people, hey, look what I'm doing. You're not telling, people don't like being told. You're showing them what's possible. Well, Howdie mentioned before we even got on this, what are we doing right now in our life? And we're trying to make the world a better place, both of us in our ways, in the actions we're doing or not doing. And this is one of those ways, by showing or allowing or sharing, as Howdie said, the ability to grow in your power and energy and freedom, no matter how old you are or how young you are, and to never give up, because there's always more to claim if you so choose to do it.
Yeah. And it's that, and again, I think it's that feeling of, I mean, it's one sense for people to try things out. Like, you should, if you have an exercise or an idea, you should try it. After a few weeks, you kind of know if it's for you. After you tried it a little bit, some people just keep doing something because they feel they're supposed to do it, which just becomes a doing in itself. They don't really want to, but somebody said, oh, I'm supposed to meditate like this. I'm supposed to do yoga. I'm supposed to whatever. So they just do it, as opposed to trying the practice and going for a few weeks and saying, yeah, I like this, it works, or it doesn't. But once you've kind of got to a point where you say, I associate with this practice, there's a meaning to it, I think then you've now got to make a commitment and decide, now you're going to do this for a while. That it's no, once there's like a barrier you cross. So same thing with like not doing or recapitulation. I think it's worth, you give it a shot a little bit. We see what happens. But certainly, like with my recapitulation work as an example, I didn't fully understand what the process did until I completed it. I thought I understood it as I was going through, and I thought I was getting all sorts of, and I was getting all sorts of value and things were happening, but that was the value I was really getting compared to when it was done. And I got that. All of a sudden, it was like, oh, this is why you do it. And so it's almost like in any of these particularly really difficult practices, there is a reward in it if you commit yourself to seeing it through to the end. And that's another one of the things we sort of you have to get, I think, get to a certain point with it as well. You can try not doing for a while, and then it's like, do I want to continue with this practice? And if the answer is yes, It's like, well, I got to deepen it now. Now I've got to actually go into much more harder and challenging stuff. Otherwise, I'm just staying on the surface of it and I'm not really going to get the benefit of the practice. So I think there comes a point when we also have to say it's beyond testing now. Now I'm either serious about it or I'm just, okay, I got an idea. I'm going to go try something else. But you have to realize there's with anything, there's a point where you say, okay, I'm going to commit myself to doing this now.
And you gain a dedication. Well, you gain the ability to continue with your work by having
Right.
some mettle, right, and some wisdom, and more importantly, through the practice,
Right.
you gain a power to us, sobriety and dedication and discipline, which is the word I'm looking for. And that,
Right.
like what it was, one of the old sayings, the reward of patience is more patience, and the reward of discipline is more discipline. And that's just something, it doesn't matter how much money you
Right.
get, you can't buy discipline. It's impossible. It's only something you can give to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And those things, you don't notice it while you're doing it necessarily. It's like those things, you understand them more even years after you've gone through the work. You understand kind of what you received from it. And yeah, it was just such a I'll ask you this question. Did you because one of the later steps of not doing is this idea of acting for the sake of acting. Did you do a lot of that when you were doing your work?
All the time. It's one of the hardest things as a human to get into, is to act for the hell of it, to not expect a reward, to not
Yeah.
expect, like I could say, newagora.ca, people can come to the website I did with a friend of mine who is another person who I've known who's done his recapitulation. We did 13, 14 newspapers
Right.
print every month. At best, we broke even. Mostly we lost money. I have to be honest, but we were sharing this kind of information to make the world a better place. And we wouldn't stop, even though it wasn't doing what this world told you it should be doing. So we had to do it for the hell of it because we loved it and
Right.
without expecting a reward. And even as Howdie said, which is interesting, is now 3 or 4 years after I've stopped, I'm still picking up the wisdom from those 12 years. I'm still putting into play what I learned and the information I shared and the people I met. I'm still sharing all of that. So again, Howdie's right. You're not going to maybe know why you've done something 12 years before till 12 years later. And you go, right. Now I have, that discipline or skill or dedication, and like now I'll wear an apron without the back anytime I need to, because, it's not going to bother me the way it would have 25 years ago, as an example of what is probably not such a
Right.
useful skill.
Skills are skills. If someone's asking, for example, what is acting for the sake of acting? Something, well, what does that mean? It means, yeah, to do something where you don't expect any kind of reward, like Lorenzo just said, because normally our mind does something thinking we do A because we think we're going to get B. So a really good example of acting for the sake of acting would be taking my all the books off my bookshelf, putting them all on the ground, not cleaning it, not doing anything, literally just putting the books on the ground and then putting them all back exactly the way they were. Like to the mind that sounds insane. Like,
Mm.
why would you do that? You just wasted 30 minutes. And in a sense, that's the point. It's like the bizarre thing is when you finish that action, something might actually reveal itself in the standpoint of knowledge, and it might not. And what you're kind of getting into this portion of being able then to just in the moment do what you feel you need to do without knowing even why you're doing it. As opposed to normally we're constantly deliberate. Oh, should I do that? If I take the books down, I won't be
Mm.
doing this. Well, how much time do I got? As opposed to just we begin to allow ourselves to just the moment says I should do this, so I'm just doing it. Why? I don't know. I'll find out later. So it begins this process of again allowing us to open, bizarrely open to some intuition and open to just doing things. But because we don't have that yet, we play with this acting for the sake of acting to, in a sense, stir that up and start getting that active within us again.
The most important aspect of that I found is it brings you into the now, right? It brings your energy into the here and now, and it keeps you powerful that way. And that if you do a whole bunch
Yeah.
of things and you go, I just looked after you. Like I've heard so many mothers, I'd look after you for 20 years and now look how you're treating me. Right. And, or I did all this for you in relationships and look what's going on. Right. So many people I'm sure have had that kind of experience. But if you learn to act for the hell of it, your energy stays with you. Right. It doesn't go into the future, doesn't go into the past, which would give you something more you need to recapitulate. Right. So like there's no good to, clean your shoes and then go jump in the mud, I guess, unless that's not doing for you, because you just make yourself dirty again. So if you're acting for the hell of it, I found that's a way to keep your energy clean after you've done a recapitulation, because you do it, you're done, you move on. If it works out, that's great. If you don't like the results, you can just not do it again. That's up to you. But and also to have expectations from other people is just, and everyone seems to have those. Like I do that work. I've talked about time. I talk to so many people that seem to have, oh yes, but my children took or yes, but my husband's doing this, or yes, but my mother won't do this for me, or my job is supposed to. And you go, you're obviously not acting for the hell of it in whatever you're doing. So you're literally tying yourself to someone else's dream energy. You're putting a weight around your ankle, and then you're wondering why you're not happy, free, and mobile, let's say, as the way you would like your dream to be, flexible, because you're literally tying yourself to other people's actions, which is the surest way to be disappointed.
It's a really good piece of, actually, people should rewind that and listen, like click back and listen to that again. That's very, very important. What Lorenzo just said, that sums up a lot of not doing. And if you actually start doing this practice and take it seriously, you're going to notice the biggest challenge you get when you not do will be your closest family members and your closest friends, because they are the ones who have especially your family members and parents, highest on the list. They have a box of who you are because they think they've built you. So they have a box of this is who you are and this is how you're supposed to be. And as soon as you start acting different from that, that's a problem for them. And it's not something they're going to accept. They're going to try to get you back in the box. And so you will notice that as you not do with people like that, you are going to be way more challenged. So that's a warning. Like expect it. Expect it.
When I came back from my 3 years in Mexico after I dropped working in the financial industry, and I was not doing my personality, just my father wanted to, have me committed. Literally, I went for dinner once and I was explaining my dreaming, my not doing. I didn't know at the time you kind of keep a lot of this to yourself. I was so excited about, look, you can break your reality this way and you could see your new dreams this way. And some of the crazy things I saw in Mexico, and I saw like these brujas or brujos, which is, witches or what, do this and that. And I thought he was going to, pick up on the excitement. But as Howdie said, he had me in a box of who I was up till I was 30. And he literally, I think I sent my mother from the room crying, and my father wanted to have me committed after I quickly learned a lot of this. And what Howdie said, some of it you keep to yourself because that's for the hell of it. You don't want to impress anybody. And the other thing is you do have to be prepared, I think, to allow those relationships, and I'll be polite here, to alter, to shift, to change, to transform.
And as you change and transform, it's recognizing that there's one sense to the not doing, and then there's another sense of there's no need to make your life difficult either. Like you kind of say, to overdo it in areas where it's not required. So it's also this sense of recognizing of, okay, if I'm not doing like normally 7 out of 10, okay, but I'm meeting these people, it might be better to do 3 out of 10 here, because it's just going to create some sort of problem I've got to deal with tomorrow. And we're not doing to create more problems for ourselves. We're not doing to become freer. So it also becomes a little bit of this awareness meter of like, okay, when is the right time? When is not the right time? When do I have to just navigate a little bit? But not to be untruthful to yourself. You might say it's just what's the level of the meter I'm going to have it at in certain places, in certain situations, so that, the idea of is it truly helping, or am I just creating more problems? And again, this is only going to be like, say, for your parents, maybe like a brother or sister, a friend you've known for 30 or 40 years, someone you've just known for a year. You're not that you're not that tight of a box yet. You have everybody has a box of everybody else, but the less you know somebody, the bigger and bigger it is. But the more they've known you, they literally think they'll know. If they say A, they know what you're going to say in response. They know if they ask a question, they already know your answer, or at least they think they do. So you have to also learn in the not, the part of the not doing is learning how to not do with people who would be trying to, like you say, oh, now you're crazy. Let's get you some help.
And,
Um, and we've all gone through that. I went through that myself with some people and thinking this was going to be great. They were going to be interested. This is good. They're going to be curious about this. And like, holy crap, they're not curious about this at all. You better shut up with these people.
I mean, I'll return the favor and suggest to the viewers maybe they rewind and listen to what Howdie just said under the guise of, we mentioned at the beginning of this video, stalking, another way you get energy. And so watching yourself, watching your actions, engaging other people's reactions to you is one of the definitions, and from what I've seen, of stalking. You stalk yourself. You may know what's better, but you realize if your father's going to die of a heart attack, or your sister's going to run away screaming, and you want to have a peaceful dinner, or you're doing something to get a certain sort of experience, that's how you stalk yourself. You watch your actions, and that will be another way you gain power, because you'll find it will move your assemblage point, because you're literally being conscious of your actions and how those are affecting the other conscious or unconscious, be it as it may, beings around you.
Yeah, it's quite a practice, and it's, in a sense, it's not difficult for anyone listening. The stuff itself isn't difficult, but it's not easy. If that makes sense, it doesn't require any sort of great knowledge. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to study anything for a long period of time. The basic practices are quite simple in their layout, but it's becoming someone who's willing to do them on a day-to-day basis. That's the challenge, because it's easy. It's easy. It's easier if I do this. It's simpler if I do this. Well, I'll do it next week. There's always a reason to not do. And so I think a huge portion of this is that's also the stalking of the self, is being able to comfortably say, well, the reason I'm moving into this practice is because something's not right about me, right? I'm not happy about something. I don't like something. If you thought your life was perfect, well, you wouldn't do any of this. You would just live your life. You wouldn't. Why would you listen to me and Lorenzo? Your life is perfect. Just go.
Yeah, go.
So if you're coming to anything like this, something is not exactly then what you want it to be. So you're already coming to that with a realization then of you want to transform something. And so then it does require this discipline and commitment to say, this is what I'm going to try, and I'm going to give it a shot. And you're always welcome to look into this stuff and pick up some of these Castaneda books if you're interested. And like I say, I would say in this particular topic, Journey to Ixtlan is probably the most accessible book, and the one that has the most simple explanation certainly for someone who has never seen this material before. It's the easiest book to sort of get an overview of, even though the last chapter is like, moving you into completely other realms and other realities. Up to that point, after the last few chapters, it's very much about stalking, hunting, not doing, all of these things that are about being aware of yourself in this reality, which is, and I think it's very accessible to anyone who reads that book.
Yeah, it's interesting that we chose that one to talk about, since it pretty much might be my favorite of all of the books. I've read it, dozens of times. And also keep in mind, what Howdie said, it's simple,
Right.
but the reason most people fail, I think, when they start not doing, or they start recapitulation, is they start to hit their own box, right? They start to hit their head, and it's not comfortable. It's I'll tell everyone right now, it's like, there's nothing comfortable about recapitulation. There's nothing comfortable about seeing how horrible you've been to yourself, if you like. So a lot of people will say, I've been good to my this, and I've been good to that, and I've been good, and I don't know why. I don't know why these bad things, but you have to see how you've been. You don't have to, but when you recapitulate, you may see how you've been horrible to yourself, how you haven't loved yourself, how you've treated yourself poorly, and you'll start to hit a stress lines, maybe it's more than a couple of lines, since it's a box, many dimensions. And to break that box, there's an effort, there's a comfort level you have to go beyond. And it really can, it is what I think scares most people back, is you go, oh my goodness, that's scary. I think I'll just, go back on my couch and go back to the job, because maybe you have to live without a source of income, let's say, for a little while. Maybe you have to live without a relationship for a while. Let's say you have to live without even, and I had to, fully knowing yourself, for a little while, because there was times I was going, who is this guy? Like, I practiced like Howdie too. I tried being too nice. I had some horrible experiences because I saw myself as being mean. Then I tried being too mean, and I said, well, I don't want to be mean anymore. And you got to find that, balance. And it really is an interesting way to change yourself.
Yeah. And that is a key part that, again, Lorenzo said, is you have to be okay being uncomfortable, because that is a part of the process. While there's lots of great stuff that comes from this, there's also a lot of stuff that's going to get churned up inside of you when you see all sorts of things about yourself. For me, one of the things that came up in my recapitulation, which in one sense shouldn't seem like a big deal to other people, but it's when I recapitulated about 3 different dates in a row, and I realized I took them on the exact same date. We went to the same restaurant. We walked to the same place on the Ottawa Canal. We sat on the same bench. In many cases, I had told the same stories, and I realized, am I that boring and unimaginative that I can't even like go to a different restaurant? I can't sit on a different bench. And I realized, holy crap, and I realized it's just fear. All it is fear, because I realize if I do something else, I'm not in control then. So by trying to reset the thing again and again and again, I realized I'm trying to take control of the situation. So when I went, after I'd seen that and I went on a different date, it was quite terrifying and uncomfortable, because I realized I'm now in, I have whatever control I thought I had, I don't. And it was, of course, extremely valuable, because then you realize, oh, you don't have to control things. Things can it just happens on its own. It's fine. You will be okay. The other person will be okay. But so these are the kind of things, when you recapitulate or not do, you have to be comfortable to see, yeah, the structure of yourself that you've built, and that can be challenging to see, honestly. So again, it's all stalking, because the end result is you are seeing yourself as you are in that moment, or have been in other moments. And some of it will be wonderful to see, that you're like, wow, I never knew I was like that. How cool. And other stuff is, I can't believe I'm like that. That's just awful. I've got to stop.
Yeah.
And stopping is a not doing.
And maybe that's a good definition, as they say, one of the definitions of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And then you see, if you see, like I saw about me, like thousands of times I would do something, and then I catch myself going, wait a minute, I'm just about to like take people on the same date, as an analogy, and I'm expecting a different result. I'll have a better time, or I'll have, and it is a brave thing to do, to be able to put yourself in the clown shoes, and then realize, oh my goodness, I've been a clown, and now, I'm still a clown, but at least I'm a conscious clown.
Yeah, I guess. Or of course, that's sort of one of the end results of this whole process is, if you over time begin to see what reality is really like, what you're really like, the transparency of it all, then you move into the stuff in the second book, in that one chapter of what's that, from Power of Silence, the not where you're not acting for the sake of acting, but that idea where you are an actor in the world. There's a controlled folly, when you begin recognizing that um, you're just an actor in the world, but you still follow the script, you might say, that you have, performing it perfectly, but not believing it. And eventually you move to that, which is an ultimate freedom, right? Where you're still in the world, you're still involved in it, you're still acting in it, but you don't ever think that you're actually truly acting in the world. And that's, of course, a long-term potential end result of all these practices, but that's a sort of ultimate freedom when you reach that kind of place, because you're here and you're not here at the same time. But it's quite a step-by-step process to potentially reach that kind of place. And I don't want anyone to think I'm at that place, because I'm not, but I know I touch it every once in a while. Every once in a while I get glimpses of what that looks like. So it's why I can share it, because I've experienced it, but it's not like it's a 24-hour a day, every day type thing. But I know it's possible that it could be.
I mean, I think this is beautiful, and I really didn't expect this to be a beautiful video, to be honest, because being something that I thought should have been a third part of our video, and I was just going to let this develop how it decided to develop, it seems to me it's kind of turning into what needs to be looked at and why most people can't be free by their own actions, because you really need to put all of these practices into play, the recapitulation, the not doing, the acting for the hell of it, the dreaming, and to see for yourself what that does for your reality and other people's reality, and to see the magic, behind that. And by that, you get to see your own patterns. And perhaps that's the only way. I'm going to put my hand up and say to free yourself is you have to be free. It's interesting. To be free, you have to free yourself. Like Howdie said before, it's so simple. And, people fighting the matrix, people fighting the rules with the politicians, just fighting. It's fine. Do what you need to do. I don't think anything is good or bad. If you feel like doing what you feel like doing in this world to make it better by how you feel you should make it better, that's totally up to you. But without also changing yourself, then you just become a finger pointer. And right. Yeah. And then no one likes a finger pointer and it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, Lorenzo makes a good point. It's, normally 90% of everyone's action is directed out here, trying to fix this, and 10% is here. And it should at least be 50-50. And the way I kind of say it now is don't be thinking you're fixing yourself, because in one sense, there's nothing wrong with you. What there is, though, is there's been a learned misperception. So we've learned to perceive reality and ourself incorrectly. And what these practices are doing are just quite simply allowing you to perceive more honestly and more clearly. So I think that's also an important way of describing it, because as soon as you say we need to fix you, well, then what's wrong with me? As opposed to, no, you're just perceiving incorrectly. When you perceive correctly, then you see there's really nothing that needs to be fixed. Or if something's out of line, it'll just start realigning itself automatically. It's just the perception that needs to be adjusted.
And this is all by your opinion of yourself. That's the beauty of the recapitulation. And when I look back at my life, I see what my 5-year-old wanted me to do with my life. I see what my 8-year-old wanted me to do. I see the dreams I had. Most people say, I don't remember my childhood. I remember my childhood perfectly right now. And your advice to yourself at the time might not be, when you're 8, might not be the same when you're 58. Unless you've done the recapitulation, you go, wait a minute, 8-year-old, Lorenzo wanted me to do art, to be growing, to be in the trees, to go out and play all day, to help people to a better life, to help people to a more loving life, just make a nice family. And then it doesn't have to be, your immediate family. And so you get to see, perhaps you'll have the power and the desire, and more importantly, the clarity to make your dreams real as you would like to see them.
Yeah. One of the weirdest I had out of my recapitulation was I was in grade 1, and the teacher was going around asking everybody, what do you want to be when you grow up? Kind of. And of course, you would get a lot of fireman, hockey player. And it came to me and I said, archaeologist. And I said, oh, you want to be an archaeologist? Why? What does an archaeologist do? I don't know. That's what I want to do. I had no idea what it was. I can't even realize why that would come out of my mouth. And it wasn't until I did the recapitulation and I was working with, at that time, the ancient Egyptians and the Mayans and whatever, sort of a type of archaeology, just not the digging in the ground part. And I kind of realized that 8-year-old me somehow had eventually manifested itself in the period where I was. So it's also interesting that we have so many glimpses when we were children of key aspects of ourselves that were there. They came up for a while, and then, like I said, we forgot about them. And the recapitulation does bring up a lot of this stuff that we had when we were young, what's a potential part of us that we can either say, oh, I did actually get to that at some point, or it's like, yeah, that's right, I do remember that when I was 10, and that's something I really wanted to do, so maybe I should go do it now. Like you say, yeah, I always wanted to do a Bob Ross painting, for example, but why don't I just finally get the paints and go try one? And it can actually bring back a lot of this stuff that was there, that we can say, it doesn't matter that I'm not 10, I can still do it. And you're so back to early on in the conversation, where you're back to, just because you're getting older doesn't mean you should be doing less. Actually, you have the opportunity to do more because you have so much more experience and possibility of what could happen.
Yeah, you stop doing stupid things. You have more time for the more intelligent things. And I mean, we can control controlled folly.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll save that for another conversation. There's a lot of stories coming up there.
Yeah.
But really, what I see in this beautiful conversation, and I'm so delighted to have been here and to be a part of that, is if you want to make your life better and you're willing to put in the hard work of seeing yourself clearly, and that's really what it is. Then what did Castaneda say? The only or was Don one? The only harder thing than recapitulating is not recapitulating. And yeah, and it's because it is
I
a hard.
agree. This has been a terrific conversation.
Yeah,
This has been it's really had a depth of value to it, and again, I think that's just because not only is it something that we understand and we like to talk, we've done it. That's the biggest difference. If someone's going to be sharing anything like this, that's an exercise, if they really haven't done it, you're never going to get the depth. And with both of us, we've done it. We've done it our own way. It's each is a little different, but either of us tell each other a story, we know exactly what they're describing. Oh yeah, I know what you mean. I know what that is. And I think that that'll come out in the conversation to all of you guys, and it'll come out energetically. I don't doubt that if you listen to this at the whole conversation, your energy will be different just from our conversation.
nice. Nice. I mean, I would like to touch on other subjects. Maybe
Yeah.
we've come to a natural conclusion on this particular topic. It seems to me there's lots more we can dive into once again, not doings and dreaming. And, maybe we'll touch base on some of the major points of our own energetic notebooks of infinity and things like that in future topics. But I think, perhaps we've taken, and that's another thing, take a pause. Howdie and I took this long pause. We haven't talked in a few months at least. Sometimes if you're at a place in your life where you're not sure what to do, or you keep hitting your head against the wall, take a pause, a month, a day, an hour, and then consider, maybe recapitulate, maybe meditate, maybe just take a long walk in the woods. It doesn't really matter. Have a quiet tea by yourself in the morning, whatever works for you. And maybe through that pause, that young child, that 8-year-old may get a chance to go, hey, you foolish guy, we didn't want to do this. Or you foolish girl, we actually wanted to go dance in Norway, under the northern lights, in the winter. And so what are you doing, selling chickens, at a Walmart in Alberta? It's really, things can change.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not taking a break. A pause is a not doing.
It is.
Because normally we're thinking we have to keep doing. So actually taking a break can become a not doing.
100%. Find your silence, find your not doing. Howdie, is there anything you'd like to leave the viewers with in this one? I think, it's been beautiful. I can honestly say, and I didn't expect
we've done a fantastic overview. Yeah, this has been easily one of my favorite conversations I think I've ever had in 3 years. I've been doing these. This has been great.
Oh, nice. I'm happy to hear it. I've enjoyed it too. To me, it's been very powerful. Like I said, I can feel my heart beating a little faster, which to me is telling me something good is going on. And Howdie, I'll invite you back. We can do some more, as our schedules allow, continue on. There seems to be a whole bunch more of these topics we can cover. And I think you and I have evolved in our relationship, even since, the beginning to this one, where, where we're sharing something of huge value, in my opinion, to the viewers. So I'll leave the links to our first couple of conversations below. If you want, you want to follow through. Obviously, I'll leave Howdie's links to his channel. And if anybody has any questions, suggestions, recommendations, like, subscribe, check out newagora.ca. More than 15 years of very related topics. Everything I choose kind of around this, even if it's a quiet way to help yourself to become a better energetic being in your own reality. All right. Thank you, Howdie. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye, everyone. I love you very much. Again, thank you for your time. And we'll see you on the next one.
Can't make me lie to my heart. No one tells me where I should start. Freedom first is what I say.